Welcome to Ideagen TV. Today we have with us Dr. Peggy Pelonis, President of the American Community Schools of Athens. Peggy, welcome.
Thank you, George. It's great to be here
You
again.
know, Peggy, it's always great to have you on Ideagen TV, especially with your global leadership and all of the incredible work that you're doing in Athens and really across the planet. It's truly remarkable, and we're watching with great, awe the impact that you're having with all of the instruction and students and the outcomes, most importantly.
I think that the young generation is they're gems, and we need to really pay attention to how we're educating them and what we're preparing them for. So it's my pleasure. Thank you.
Peggy, back in 2015, all 193 member states of the United Nations came together unanimously and agreed upon the 17 global goals of the UN. And it's striking to think about 193 member states, every single member state restated, every single member state of the United Nations agreed to something. And that something, again, is the 17 global goals of the United Nations. These 17 global goals that are being discussed in Davos and across the world at forums and other places are really important because they address the most important facets of issues and the most complex and perhaps most difficult questions facing humanity. And so, Peggy, what do you see? What do you see as the greatest benefits of instructing, of teaching the next generation about these global goals?
Well, George, we've entered the age of artificial intelligence, no doubt. And so the role of human intelligence remains the most important factor, I think, in the development of humanity. And so the continuous technological advancements stress the importance of soft skills like resilience, emotional intelligence, critical thinking, and of course, ethical decision making. But teaching students about the SDGs also expands their mind, and it helps them to understand other cultures, other mindsets. It creates this global awareness that encourages empathy and collaboration, which is very important also in the expanding market. And it encourages entrepreneurship and solution oriented approaches to problems. So, how can we go wrong, by teaching children about the SDGs and that there is really a higher purpose to everything that we do, and the choices that we make can put us closer to a better world, a better planet, better lives, or not, depending on what choice we make.
That's right. And, as you mentioned, you're at the crossroads in Athens at ACS Athens with students from so many different countries attending ACS Athens. And so, what do you see as that galvanizing goal? What is the goal that you find most students of the 17 that you find most students are interested in and maybe passionate about?
I think a lot very aware of what is fair and just in the world, and this is something that speaks to them, especially nowadays with all the discourse. Also, climate action seems to speak to them because of the volatile weather conditions that we're experiencing. I don't know, where you are, but where we are, we've had some strange weather this year, which is really bringing this to the forefront. And so they see that these issues affect their daily lives, and they're very relevant in their world. But there is also this idea of partnerships, which is the very last sustainable development goal, and that we need to have very strong partnerships. And if anything, young people are realizing that developing partnerships makes for a stronger positioning, and they're likely to initiate these collaborations through various projects. I mean, they're not shy. They're very likely to initiate partnerships across the globe and to collaborate sometimes better than we adults do.
That's so well said. So well said. And so, where would you call attention to the goals that could use more attention? In other words, what are those goals that you feel like they're so important, but yet we need to do more to highlight those goals?
I think when we talk about young people, a lot depends on the lens through which they see. The younger children are less likely or less able to understand someone else's plight unless there is continuous education about it and how it affects their own lives. For example, somebody who has quality education is less likely to understand those who have no access or limited access to education. The same thing is true of things like poverty and hunger or even decent work conditions. And that's why educational institutions would do well to consider making everyone aware of how people in different parts of the planet live and the challenges that they face. But this takes continuous education and repetition before it becomes something that particularly young people own. What they do want to place attention towards is making things happen, doing things. This makes young children feel good to do for others, to do for their environment, whether or not they understand the plights they like to do. And I think getting them in that mindset and helping them understand that what they're doing is making a difference is really important.
And so you're working with students from across the world in Athens, and you have a global footprint, and you're leading globally. Peggy, what do you see as the path forward for helping to infuse the global goals into curriculum across the planet?
Um, I think it's really a decision to implement these teachings in the curriculum. Most curriculums, anyway, discuss issues of social justice, responsibility within a society. And in this case, it would happen on a larger scale, it would be continuous, because becoming aware of the effects that these social conditions have today in our lives, and not just part of history, not just part of literature, but that these are things that affect our life and life on the planet. So sooner or later, it will affect us all. So working towards a viable planet and improving life for all is a responsibility of all. So, for example, if there's a part of our body that is ill or suffers, how can the whole be well? It's the same with our planet. When one part suffers, the whole is affected. Or when our fellow human beings suffer, the whole is affected. And I think when we understand that through the curriculum, it can be great towards creating mindsets of solution-oriented people.
And so what kinds of challenges and or roadblocks would you say you've had to face at ACS Athens by offering the unique experiences that you've described?
I think that most challenging, believe it or not, has not been with the students. They're really open to new experiences and they're willing to take risks much more than many of the adults, many of us are. The most challenges have been with some of the adults, not because they're not willing, but it's mostly a time factor for one thing. So, for example, they might ask, how can I cover the entire curriculum and incorporate all of these things as well? But when we get past that, I think the teachers can really be fabulous in guiding the students. And it takes continuous professional development to guide teachers through such initiatives. And the school has to be very committed to making that happen.
The what you've described is so incredibly epic in terms of connecting the dots. And so I'd like to ask you, Peggy, because you have your finger on the pulse of what's happening globally in education. How do you see the future of education and the Sustainable Development Goals, those 17 global goals, uniting this same curriculum on this global scale?
I see a lot of organizations and a lot of schools around the world paying attention to the Sustainable Development Goals because perhaps we're finally getting to a place where we're realizing the urgency. The more people team up with each other to work on these, the more the momentum grows. So I think we will see more results sooner than we expected a few years ago. And of course, acceleration is very necessary. And this can only happen if we team up and work towards the same goal. So the more awareness we create, and not, with older, younger ages, everyone involved in schools and organizations, in businesses, whatnot, the more the momentum will grow, and I think the more results we'll see.
And so as we look at the classroom, so we're inside the classroom, how do you then implement this critical, vital collaboration within the classroom with a focus on the issue of these global goals?
I think I'll talk to you from the sense of from the position of my school, where we talk a lot about responsible conscious citizenship. And we do this early on so that students understand that what they choose to do here in this environment will ultimately affect things on a larger scale. And so, in that sense, it takes a lot of self reflection and asking questions such as, what was the impact of my actions? What will happen if I don't take action? What is my responsibility in this? When students start to make these connections, they become very creative problem solvers. You give them the problem, they'll figure it out, and they will actually come up with a variety of solutions if we trust in their abilities. And I think that kind of encouragement and growth mindset is what's necessary to help them move forward.
And then as you get to this level, so now you have this dialogue, this sort of conversation taking place. How do you then find the right balance between the traditional educational learning and the social ethics included in the global goals?
I find it quite easy because in every curriculum, we ask questions about justice, equality, ethics, whether it's analyzing literature, discussing history, or understanding biology and physics. So it's about adding a slightly different dimension to learning the facts. It's about thinking about what we're learning and wondering about the ethics involved. So in any new invention, medicine, technology, art, if it's seen through this lens, through the lens of how will this improve life and living on the planet, how can I make things a little bit better, leave them a little bit better than what I found? I think it's not a difficult thing to incorporate and implement.
Dr. Peggy Pelonis, president of ACS Athens, you have the final word. What would you like to share with our global audience today on the global goals?
I just want to say that here in Athens, we're located in Greece. So I think we have the best of two worlds, the American curriculum and philosophy. And what I mean by philosophy is that the students have choices. They have choices in electives and activities, in their studies, unlike many of the systems where they have to choose a certain path early. But we also live in Greece, and it's a country where ideals like democracy and justice were invented and broadly discussed. And we see lots of organizations locally working towards the SDGs in meaningful ways. We also have 65 different nationalities in the school, so really students are ready to go out into the world with a lot of tools necessary to navigate globalization. Now, the expansion of the internet, along with the recent COVID-19 pandemic, has transformed the way we all live and work. And so more happens much faster, and more people communicate, interact, and work together with various people from other countries and from other different cultures. So we have become more international. This is important in order to remain competitive in the global market. And for this reason, people with the necessary soft skills and specialized internationally, that kind of knowledge oriented, towards an international perspective, are needed. And I believe that schools like ACS Athens and other schools like this provide these necessary skills. So I feel pretty lucky to be in this country, in this school, and also to be working with students who are open-minded, and of course families that are open-minded enough to want to learn and go in this direction.
Dr. Peggy Pelonis, president, ACS Athens, thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your work to change the world and to educate students across the planet on the importance of the global goals of the United Nations. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Thank you, George. Thank you.